Just in time for the spookiest day of the year, ghost stories like you've never heard that jump from the pages of books written by our next guest. Let's welcome Matt McLaine, author and pirate historian. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Had the pleasure of just exploring parts of Charleston and to hear some of these stories, but this is really a passion of yours. Why did you decide that piracy was such an interesting subject to cover?
There's so many fascinating tales. They're scoundrels, let's be clear. These are not heroes or Robin Hood, but their stories are still so interesting. And the more I looked into pirate history, the more their stories wove in and out of the Low Country and out of the Carolinas. So I couldn't go 5 feet without running into a story about some pirate who had not just stopped by, not just caught a ship offshore, but had a lasting impact right here where I've been, right? Places I've fished, places I've stood. And to me, that was absolutely fascinating.
And not just in the flesh, but their spirit has remained in many cases, and they haunt various places around the Low Country, which I want to make sure that we get to. But you are a published author. You have these 2 books, and you do have a couple other that are in the works. Congratulations on that. But it all started with Wikipedia. Tell us more about this.
It did. I had read a few books on pirates, and the books would mention common figures like Blackbeard and the gentleman pirate Stede Bonnet, which if you've watched Our Flag Means Death, you know about both of those. But they mentioned lots of obscure figures too, and I had to know about them. I had to know more, and a quick Google search didn't turn anything up. I'm like, this is a mystery now. So I had to go down the rabbit hole, hit the books, hit the research, and find out more about them. And I decided I'm going to save the next person looking for info on some of these more obscure figures the trouble.
Right.
And I added Wikipedia articles for them. And of course, that's how Wikipedia works and how history works. 1 leads to 2, leads to 3. Before I knew it, I'd written almost 200 Wikipedia articles, all on pirates and buccaneers. And I'd amassed such a library of research of books and journals and articles and interviews that
are hundreds of years old, by the way.
Most of them are indeed. These are all original period sources. And I had to do something with them. And the more I looked, I'm like, some of this will make for great stories. Let's condense this and put the best together for our readers.
I want to hear about the ghost stories. So is there a ghost story that we have not yet heard that you've discovered yourself and maybe even experienced?
Oh, there are ghost stories all over. Charleston is one of America's most haunted cities. And because pirates had such an influence throughout Charleston's history, it's not hard to find where they overlap. One of the most famous ghost sightings and ghost stories and pirate history moments happens right down on the Battery at White Point Gardens.
Yes.
There's a monument, a memorial there, to the hanging of nearly 50 pirates.
Wow.
And 1 month's time, just a few weeks' time, most of the crew of the gentleman pirate Stede Bonnet was hanged just off the Battery there, just off Water Street. Piracy was considered a crime at sea, is under the jurisdiction of the Admiralty, not the land courts, which meant that punishment should also happen at sea. Pirates were traditionally hanged between the high tide and low tide marks, between the high and low water marks, which meant they weren't actually hanged on the Battery. They weren't hanged down at White Point Gardens, but that was the closest land spot to where they were.
Oh, goodness.
And with nearly 30 members of Stede Bonnet's crew, you'd think that'd be enough for some vengeful spirit to want to haunt the hangman or haunt the governor for sentencing them.
Sure.
Except that just a few weeks later, the governor got word that another pirate was hovering off the coast, a pirate named Moody. He sent out a fleet. He's like, I'm not waiting for them to attack. I'm going to go get him. He outfitted 4 ships. Got there, and it wasn't Moody at all. A completely unrelated pirate named Richard Worley. And then Worley and his co-captain were just waiting offshore, and suddenly the governor's men show up in 4 ships.
And I have to interject here, hundreds of years later,
again,
these spirits, they're still around.
They're still with us.
I want to thank you so much, Matt McLaine. So we're going to keep our eye on the next 2 books that are going to be released. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been
really
a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hey, if you hear the spirits of 50 dead pirates screaming at you from the trees in the Battery, you'll know where they came from.
And it's not your imagination, folks. Happy Halloween. We're back after this.